Okay, so I should just run over a couple of announcements really quick, just for you guys and also for anyone who like looks through the recording later. The first one, and now it's raining again, sweet deal. So the first one, the biggest one, is that we're right in the middle of Hack to the Future, which you guys have probably seen announcements for many, many times in the past few weeks, and then also a bunch of emails, hopefully you guys saw this week. So this event, the FinTech Hackathon is closing on April 10th. So there's still plenty of time to submit to that. But the big thing that we've been trying to advertise is that UCF is having their own like mini competition inside of Hack to the Future. And any UCF team that competes in Hack to the Future and submits is also eligible for prizes from UCF themselves. UCF is promoting their new Masters in FinTech program. So if that's something that you're interested in or learning more about, I highly encourage all of you guys to submit a project to this hackathon. If you want, actually, I'll talk about the UCF specific things a little bit later. But for the global hackathon, it's virtual and asynchronous. You don't have to go anywhere, and you have several weeks to submit your project, come up with one if you haven't already started. There's 3 themes for the hackathon. If you submit a project that follows one of those themes, then you're eligible for different categories of prizes. And you can register on that dev post link, fintech.devpost.com. Apparently there are no other FinTech dev posts because they got the one URL for that. But that's due on April 10th. The UCF like mini competition is the really interesting part. They're having their own summit event next week on March 31st and April 1st. March 31st is sort of a networking reception event for which they'll invite any teams that have submitted just like a preliminary post. You don't have to have a completed project. You just have to have an idea and submit it. And you can update your submission coming towards April 10th for the actual hackathon with your real project. But if you submit, you'll be eligible to be judged and invited to this reception where you'll be able to like actually talk to some people that are involved in the industry and involved in the grad program. So that'll be like a really, really great experience. That's probably the most important thing to come out of this. Don't tell them I said that. But you can also register for the April 1st, which is the Friday. March 31st is next Thursday. And you can register for the all-day event, which has lots of speakers from, again, industry leaders, academia, professionals. And also there was, I think one at the beginning, they were hoping to get a keynote from like the governor, Ron DeSantis, which, to some of you is really interesting. To some of you is like, why would I ever want to listen to that? I don't know if that's actually happening or not, but that's the level of people that they're inviting to this thing. So, this is like once in a lifetime. So seriously, I would highly encourage all of you to submit something. Again, you just need to submit some preliminary post on DevPost by the 29th to be eligible for everything.
How complete is the idea?
You need to have an idea and write it out in your submission. You don't have to have any code submitted or anything, but they need to be able to judge and look at the idea and decide whether, it's something that is actually worth possibly awarding a prize to, which there won't be 10 teams submitting. So I don't think there will be any problem with that. But, if you submit like a complete joke, then they're not going to invite you. So seriously, if you have a team, just submit something. And you can keep working on it beyond that deadline and submit it by April 10th to be eligible for the actual like monetary prize, which is several $100s per student plus an NFT if you're into NFTs. But there's lots of really good things to come out of here. So these are the 2 links that you can follow to get more information about that. And they're also all over the announcements. Okay. And then, just the normal announcements. You're at a workshop here. Thank you all for being here, all 5 of you. Flagship meetings, all that jazz. Caves on Friday. Tomorrow we'll be back to normal schedule for the cave. I guess that's not super relevant. Sorry, I gotta put my phone on do not disturb. We have lots of positions open. The e-board, which is, I'm the vice president for the e-board. All of the e-board positions are going to be open for next year. So we're gonna have an election next month. If you want to run for any of our 4 e-board positions, they are all open. More information on that will be coming as soon as we can solidify exactly how it's going to work. But we also have lots of director positions that are still open. Please, if any of these seem like something you'd be good at, at least send an application, even if you don't know if you're qualified. And we're also going to start opening our actual teams for Night Hacks. The dev team application is already open. Again, everyone should apply to the dev team. It's a super awesome experience to learn from some extremely cool people and actually work on an open source project, which is something you don't normally get to do. Sponsorship team applications will be opening soon. If that's something you'd be interested in, that's not technical, but that helps us actually host a hackathon. We'll get that out as soon as we can solidify that as well. And you can always submit your resume, GitHub, LinkedIn. That is always open. Okay, that's everything for announcements. So let us jump right into things. So there's 3 of you on Zoom, which I'm going to try and manage as best I can, and 2 people in person. Quick show of hands for the people in person and quick show of message in the chat. How many of you saw the little blurb that we put out about installing Node.js before you came? Do you guys have it both installed? Okay. How about you guys on the Zoom? I think there's 4 of you on Zoom and Sneak. So, do you guys have Node installed on your computer, or should we run through that really quick? All right, Aaron is a yes. Sunit, I never questioned. And the other 2, Zachary Kreiner. If you don't know, open up the terminal really quick. Actually, we should all do this just to make sure that we have something. Terminal if you're on Mac or Linux, command prompt if you're on Windows, and just run node -- version. And if it comes up with something, you have Node installed. It'll give you a version here. The version doesn't actually matter. If it doesn't give you that and it says instead, what is Node? Then you'll have to reinstall it. Okay, well, for lack of objection, we are going to just jump into things here. Okay, awesome. Zachary's good. All right, here we go. So we're gonna start making a Discord bot here. So what we're gonna do is just find somewhere on your computer that you want to install things. I'm gonna open up my projects folder. We'll close the chat here. And we're gonna make a Mad Libs robot because Mad Libs were an integral part of my childhood. So naturally, we gotta bring back the nostalgia. So open that up. You can go ahead and open it in whatever IDE you're using. I'm going to use VS Code, which will take a while to load because I just restarted my computer. Okay, so there's a lot of things that we're going to have to set up initially that are not related to the actual code before we can get this to run. And the main reason is because Discord lets you use their API, but they're very, very careful about it, and as they should be. So we need to do a couple things. First of all, we need to create our project. For anyone who hasn't used Node before, Node is basically just a way of writing JavaScript to do things that are not related to the web browser. So by default, JavaScript, you can put it directly into a web page and the browser runs your JavaScript. But that's, it's helpful for if you're making a website, but what if I want to do everything else with JavaScript? And Node helps us use packages that other people have written to do lots of really cool things. And the thing that we're going to do today is we're going to create a project that runs a process that creates our Discord bot, brings it online, connects to Discord. And then when we perform certain actions, our bot is going to recognize those actions and then give something back. So there's a couple of packages on Node that we need to install. And the way we're going to do that is first we're going to create a new Node project. So open up your terminal again and make sure that your terminal is in the same directory as your project. So if it's not, you'll have to run cd to try and get to that specific location. If you're using VS Code, it just opens it in the right folder, which is awesome. And then we're going to run npm init. And it's going to create a new thing for us, and it's going to give us a lot of options that we can select. So you'll see here, it starts with this utility will walk you through creating a package.json file. Package.json is the way that we define everything that's important about our project. So the first thing that we need to define is a package name, and it gives you a default there. If you want to name it something else, you can type something in here. But we're good with Mad Libs bot. So we're just going to click enter. And it also supplies a version, which we're good with that. Our description, we'll write a Discord bot that feeds Mad Libs. I don't actually know what the correct spelling of Mad Libs is. It looks correct as one word, but I don't actually know. JavaScript users. Okay. So the entry point is basically where's your program going to start? Akin to, another thing like Java, and you have a main method and a main class. It just needs a class, a JavaScript file that it's going to run first, and we're going to call it index.js. We're going to leave test command empty for now. We're not going to do any serious testing here. Same for Git repository and keywords. Author, you can put your own name in there. License, if you wanted to specify a specific license for your code, which tells other people how you can use it legally. We're not going to do that here. Rob will get mad at me for not putting in a license, but he's not here, so he can't hurt me. Okay, and at the bottom it'll tell you, is this okay? It's just basically feeding you what it's going to look like. If this looks good to you, you can just click OK again. And so now we have our package.json up here. If we open it, it'll have all the things that we just told it to put in there, which is super cool. Honestly, if you don't answer all of these questions the exact same way, it does not matter. None of these are super important to make your thing run. You can change them at any time and it will not affect anything. Yeah, entry point is just which script is going to run first. Index.js, we didn't have that, so it's basically just going to, it's going to put it in there, but that doesn't exist yet. We'll have to create it at some point. And we're actually going to do that right now. I'm going to create a separate folder to put in all of our source code. If you're writing a really big project, then eventually you'll have so many files that you won't want them all at the same level because you won't be able to find one easily. So typically, if we have a bunch of JavaScript source code, we're going to put it in a source folder, and we'll create our index.js. And basically, this is just going to run first. So how many of you guys have actually written JavaScript before? Sunit, I know you have. Have you guys done anything with JavaScript in your lives? Okay. Okay, so JavaScript is really cool. It's not this exact same as a normal programming language. It's a scripting language. Welcome. Are you here for Night Hacks?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. You're just in time. We just got started. Have you pre-installed Node on your computer or no?
Yeah, I believe it's installed.
Okay, awesome. In which case, just go ahead and log in, and then once you get logged in, let me know, and I can bring you up to speed really quick. So JavaScript is really cool because it's like a scripting language. So you can just write out a bunch of code and it'll run it from top to bottom once, and then it'll do whatever you want it to do. So we'll just put like a single statement in here of something we wanted to do. We just want to print to the console, hello world. Because, we got a hello world. And so this script is going to run top to bottom. It's only going to find one instruction, and then it's going to try and run it. And we can actually run our Node project by using a command. So we're going to go back to the terminal, and we're going to use Node, and then the file that we want to run, index.js. If we do that, it's going to horribly disagree. Cannot find module. You are absolutely right. So we need to specify, because we put it in the source file, we need to specify the full path to that thing. Okay, and so now when we do that, it runs our script and it prints everything out to the console, and then it just ends. It doesn't keep going because there's nothing left to do. So that's pretty cool. We're going to do a lot more complicated things here than just this. But first, I want to take just a pause so that we can get our most recent attendee up to speed. What's your name, by the way?
Jonathan.
Jonathan? Okay, awesome. All right, so whenever you're ready to go, just create a folder on your computer somewhere. Are you a VS Code user or no?
Yeah.
Okay, in which case just open it up in VS Code and run npm init, and then just accept everything it tells you. We just started with a blank project, nothing super fancy. And just a warning to everyone in advance, if I run too fast, please, 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 please tell me to stop and ask your question, because last week I did this. By the end, every single person had left because I lost them and no one spoke up, and so they just left. Don't do that. Just ask me the question. I'm happy to stop.
Okay, how do I run?
So you can do it two ways. The way we did it is by running the node command in your terminal, and then specify the path to the file that you want to run with Node. Node is a runtime environment. So if you've written with Java before, Java has a Java runtime environment, which basically just interprets the thing and then runs it as it should. So Node is the same thing, but for JavaScript. So we're telling it this is what we want to run. And you'll notice that when we specified our entry point, actually, this doesn't do anything. We're gonna do something here. We're gonna go to our package.json, and we are going to add an extra script. So a script is a way that you can run your program. That way we don't have to like type out the whole command into our command line every time. So we're gonna put something in here. We're gonna put a start script, and that should be lowercase start in quotes. Yes, you can get rid of the test script. We're not gonna use it. And then we're gonna put exactly what we just put in there. And so that's our new script for how we're going to run this. So we have a start script, and the way that we can call that start script is if we go into the terminal, we can do npm start, and it'll run the script the exact same way it would if we ran node source. And again, we get the exact same thing. There's also some extra decoration down here just telling you what it's doing. This is the project, the version, and then it's running the start command, and then this is the command that it's actually like physically running. And you'll see we also, again, print hello world. Is everyone cool with that? Introduction to Node 101. You can open the terminal directly in VS Code.
Oh, yeah, I know, but like, I did the start command there.
Okay. Yeah. So start is like an actual command on Windows. What you want to run is npm start rather than just start. Okay. npm means the node package manager, and then you put the script that we want to run. If we put another script in here, we could say npm that script, and it would do that. This is the only one we're actually going to use right now. We'll specify another one in a little bit. And that should print hello world. Okay, is everyone good here? Jonathan, are you good? Kind of lost. Aaron, where are you lost? I need you. You can actually speak up a little bit if you want to unmute for a second, if that's easier than typing. I don't want to keep going if someone's lost, because this is going to be a really long workshop. Like you're just opening it for the first time. So are you running like a setup process, or are you in VS Code right now? Okay, so, all right. So if you're in VS Code, just a quick rundown, all of your, you can open a specific folder using the open, going to file open, and it'll open whatever folder you choose. I chose to open the madlibspot folder, and then it'll display all of your files on the left side here. So we've created these files. The package.json got generated when we ran node init or npm init. And then we created a source folder and an index.js. And then we added just this one line into that file. And if we want to run our terminal, well, we can go up to the top where it says terminal, new terminal, and it'll bring it down here. And this is just like running the command prompt, but it puts it right in the location that you're working. If there's any more specific questions, I can answer those, but otherwise I'm just going to keep going at this point. We're already about halfway in, half an hour in. So let's do some more non-technical things really quick. We are going to install a couple of extra packages. So we don't want to write all of our code from scratch because we'll never be able to actually, finish. So we're going to install a couple of packages. So the packages that we need, let me just get a full list here. We're going to install packages using the npm I command. And then we need to specify what do we want to do with them. So we're going to write npm I, And these ones we're going to save as dev dependencies. Dev dependencies means I only need this package for when I'm writing code. When this thing actually runs, we don't need it. If we wanted to save it as an actual dependency, it's something that literally our code requires in order to run properly. We're going to install a couple things that are not required. It's 2 dashes and then save and then another dash and then dev. It's so dev means that dev dependencies. If you run this, you'll actually see what happens in a second. And what we're going to install is a package called nodimon. So this command here, npm I --save -dev nodimon. And it'll be very slow for me. It'll probably be faster for you because you're not screen sharing at the moment. It's going to run through, it's going to install the package, and then it's going to tell you we did it. We added something. And you'll also notice that it generates an extra folder up here called node modules. And node modules is all of the node things that are required to make your thing work. And this is a lot. I did not ask for all of these things to be installed, but these are just the base things that Node installs in every project, plus the one we just installed, nodimon. And if you go into the package lock.json, you don't need to interact with this directly. This just gives like an exact configuration of all the packages you've installed. But if you go back into package.json, you'll see down here, there's now a section called dev dependencies. And this section is for all of the dependencies that you are using when you're writing code to make things a little bit easier. But these things are not going to be included when you actually run it. It's not going to, affect the way that things are run. If you do have a package that you need that is going to make your thing work, then you need to save it to regular dependencies. And we're going to do that next. So go back in your terminal and we're going to run npm I again. This time we're going to use just --save. So the save flag instead of save dev. And what we're going to install is discord.js and then .env. And once again, those things will go. Discord.js is the package that lets us interact with the actual Discord components that are going to let our bot work. And .env is a way of storing variables for your code to use as it's running.
So when you run save discord.js, it downloads the Discord packages?
Yeah, it's going to.
And then it downloads.
We're specifying 2 packages. You can put as many in a row as you want. Those are 2 separate packages, discord.js and .env. Yeah, that's a great question. So now we have 2 extra things here. We'll use discord.js a lot and .env just a little bit. The main reason why you would want .env is if you have something that is very private and you don't want to publish when you put your things up on GitHub. There's a lot of when there's security involved, as there is with accessing an API, you usually get a key, which lets you actually get into the API and lets the API know that you're the right person who's requesting information. And that key you don't want to publish so that no one else can use it in your place. So you don't ever want to publish that to GitHub. And instead, what we do is we put it in a .env file, and it keeps it private, and we don't push the .env file to our GitHub repository. And we're going to do that a little bit of that. Okay, is there anything else that we need to install right now? No. So let us go into Discord. You can do it either if you have the Discord app installed or through the browser. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into user settings. And we're going to scroll down here on the left side to advanced. And you'll notice there's a slider here that is conspicuously labeled developer mode. And we're going to turn that on. And that's going to let us actually use the Discord API. And it's going to give us some helpful information that we're going to use a little bit later that you can use to get a specific ID of either a person or a server that you're on or a channel. All of them have unique IDs stored in Discord, which let you refer to a specific thing. And you can only see those if you're in developer mode. Does everyone have that flipped on, or are you still working on that? How about on Zoom? Also, if anyone needs me to slow down or answer a question, please either speak out loud or put it in the chat. Either one is fine. You can always unmute on the Zoom. Okay. Unless I hear an objection, I'm going to keep going. We're going to go into our browser and we're going to search for Discord developer portal. You can click the top link here. And immediately we're going to be overwhelmed by information, which is okay. This is all information that is useful for people who are developing some sort of app that uses the Discord API. We're going to make a bot which uses the Discord API, but you could also develop like a website that pulls information from Discord. And that would be a little bit different than we're going to do it. But we need to set up our bot on the Discord portal. So there was a button at the top here on the left called Applications. We're going to select that, and I'm going to have to log in here again. When you're in here, we don't have any applications currently listed here. And so we're going to go up to where it says New Application. We can create a name for this. We're going to make it Mad Libs bot. And now we have lots of other options we can configure. We're not going to configure all of them, just some of the most important things. We're going to leave the description out for now. And what is the right order here? Let's do this. So go back to nighthacks.org/linktree for a second. I have a little thing here called Workshop Assets. It's going to give you a compressed zip file, which hopefully is accessible to all of you. I think I shared it correctly. Just go ahead and download that really quick. And I'm going to go to my downloads folder where the zip file is, and then I'm going to open it. It's going to decompress it, but whatever computer you are, you find a different way to decompress the file. And in here, there are two files. There is a JavaScript file that I have written for you just because it involved a little bit of text, and also a madlibs.png. So we're going to copy both of those out and then go back to wherever your project is and just paste them into the file at the same level as everything else. And since it's a JavaScript file, we can actually put that in the source folder. The logo you can just leave out here because it's not super important. Recording will be posted, absolutely. Hopefully within a week. Okay, so theoretically, we should have that downloaded. So you can go back into your developer portal here. And we're just going to upload the icon. Where it says app icon here, you can upload an image. Just go find it wherever it is. And upload your madlibs logo.png. And now our bot has a face, which is pretty cool. Anytime you make a change, Discord is going to require you to save it before you can go to a different page, which is very nice of them. And everything else in here, we're going to leave blank for now. None of this is super important to our specific application right now. So again, I was saying earlier that there's like really two ways that you can use the Discord API. You can use it like creating a bot, which has its own special configurations, or you can use it as just like, any API access. So you can make a website that calls the Discord API. But since we're making a bot, we're going to go to the bot section and we're going to add a bot, which allows your program to actually be a user on the server. And it'll fill in our icon here for us since we put that earlier. The username looks good to me, madlibsbot. And you'll notice there's a little section here called token. Token is very important because again, like we said, we need some way to authenticate that this is the correct user. We are the right person to be making these actions. So the token is secret. It's specific to your bot. You don't ever want to post this online. And that's why it always hides it. We can't actually see it right now. So we're going to click reset token to give us a new one. And it's going to give you this really long string of text here. You can copy the whole thing with the copy button. And we're going to go back into our VS Code here. And we're going to create a file out here at the same level as your package.json called .env. Not dot like dot like earlier, literally a period and then env. And we're going to, so a .env file is a bunch of variables. So we need a name for the variable and then the value that's going to go into it. So we're going to name this token because that's what it told us it was. And we're going to paste that in here. And if you ever upload this to GitHub, you should create a git ignore. That means that that says this file will not get uploaded. You don't ever want someone to see this token. We're also going to put two extra things in here that are not quite as important to keep secret, but we're going to put it in here anyway. We're going to put in a client ID. And then we're also going to put in a guild ID. Discord is weird. It doesn't refer to a server as a server. It refers to servers as guilds. So that's what that ID will be for. It'll identify the server we want to use for our bot. And then our client ID is the ID of the bot user itself. So we can get the client ID. It's also in the developer portal somewhere. I don't actually know where it is. A token, it's probably here. Okay, so if we go to OAuth 2, you'll see client information and client secret. Client secret is the same thing that we just copied out the token. So you don't want anyone to see that. The client ID we will copy. And then we'll put it back in our .env file here under client ID. So that'll be a number starting in 9. I don't know why they all start in 9. I can guess, but I don't know for certain. And then we need to get our guild ID. So we're going to create a testing server just for now so that we can put it in. Eventually, you can add this bot as a user to any server, but just for now, while we're testing, we're going to keep it separate from everything. So if we go up here to the plus icon, add a server, and then create my own for me, and we can call it whatever we want. We'll call it Mad Libs testing. It'll create. Okay, so much power. It's the little plus button. It'll be at the bottom of your entire server list. I just happen to not have any servers on this account right now. And go through there, just create a blank server. It doesn't need to be anything special. We can do it from anywhere. Okay, so we have our server created. We need to find the ID of that server. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on the server icon here. And now at the bottom, we see a button called copy ID. This did not exist until you turn developer mode on. So now that developer mode is on, we can copy the ID of the guild and then put it back into our VS Code under guild ID, which will also be an ID starting in 9, but it'll be a different number. Does anyone not see copy ID? Okay. Sweet. So that is all the information we need right now. We need to do a couple of other things. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, so what we need to do is we need a way for our server to actually add the bot. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to specify a URL that allows us to actually add the bot to a specific server. So we're going to go over here to OAuth 2 and URL generator. And we need to specify what are the things our bot is allowed to do so that the URL that's generated can appropriately, pick out what permissions it needs to have. So our thing is a bot, so we're going to specify bot here. If we had like an actual website that was accessing different pieces of API, we might need to select some of this other stuff. But because we don't, the only things we want to put in this top button, the scopes, are bot, which prevents a lot of extra hassle. And then also application.commands, which will be up in the top right here. Commands are how we're going to interact with our bot and tell it to do things. Previously, in previous versions, you would have to like, have some specific format and have the bot read all of the messages. And if there's a specific format, then parse it into a command. Recent versions of Discord have introduced something called slash commands, which you probably used if you've used our bot at all. It currently does not work because we don't actually have it set up to work. But slash commands mean that you can call a command with just a slash and then a specific format. It's actually really, really nice. So applications.commands and bot. And then down here, we need to tell it what can our bot do. And so we're going to say that it can, we're going to go on the left side to read messages / view channels. And in the middle, we need it to be able to send messages at the top. And then we also need it to be able to mention, no, we don't want to do that. We want to read message history. So our bot is only going to interact with messages from users and send out its own. We don't want it to do anything else. So we're not going to let it do anything else. That would be scary. And at the bottom, it'll have a generated URL. This URL is what we're going to use to actually add our bot to servers. Anyone can use this URL and it'll go through a whole dialogue. We can actually see that right now if we put it into another tab. Copy that out and paste it into another tab. And it'll bring up this dialogue here saying an external application, Madlib's bot, wants access to your Discord account, which is a little scary, but it's really just to add it to a server. And we can pick which server we want to add it to your testing server and click continue. And then once again, it'll affirm which permissions it wants, and you can specify whether you're okay with that or not. We're okay with that, and we'll click authorize. And a CAPTCHA, just in case you decided as a robot to add a robot to your server. I don't know what this is, but we'll allow it. Okay, so it is authorized, and you'll hear that it added to your server. Sweet deal. So now this robot is on your testing server. It's currently offline because we haven't actually run our bot yet. It needs to be actively running to be online and do things. And we'll get to that very, very shortly. Okay, super cool. So that's all the hassle preparation that we need to set up. Honestly, just getting the permissions and the URL took me a good hour and a half to figure out yesterday before I realized that I was doing it wrong. So if you ever get lost in this, it's very, very easy, and do not feel scared. But now we're good to go. Our bot is on here, so we can actually do some cool stuff. All right, let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, so we're gonna go back into VS Code, and we're gonna add a couple of extra things in here. Right at the top, well, actually, you can put it literally anywhere. None of these have to be in any specific order. We're gonna put in a type property, and the type is going to be module. You can either put it as common.js or module. And it just specifies what is the format that we want our import and exports for our files to take. Normally, if you were writing an application, you would just have a bunch of JavaScript and inject it all into the page, and then the JavaScript can just communicate with each other, no problem. But because we're running it in a runtime environment, we need to treat it like, actual modules. We import code that we want to use, packages we want to use, and we can export the code that we want other modules to use. And the way we're going to do that is using the module syntax. Okay, and then the other thing is we're going to change our scripts here a little bit. We're going to change our start script from node source index.js. We're going to change it to nodemon, which we installed earlier when we installed node, our npm I save dev nodemon. Normally, if you run like the normal start command with just node, it'll run your thing, but every time you make changes, it won't update. You'll have to terminate the script and then run it again to get those changes. Nodemon just automatically updates things if it's running, and it'll reload, so you don't have to constantly stop it and restart it and stop it and restart it. Exactly. That's not actually going to change how it runs. Like, we're not using any of the code from Nodemon. It's just for when we're testing, which is why it's a dev dependency. And that's why we have it. You might not think it makes a big deal, but I was kind of pulling my hair out yesterday, just working with this workshop, because things wouldn't work, and I'd be investigating them, and I'd fix something and I'd run it again, and I'd have to stop it and start it and stop it and start it. And it saves a surprising amount of time. Yeah. Okay, so we got that. And we're also going to run we're going to put in one other script here. We're not going to use yet, but we're going to specify a script that we're just going to arbitrarily name deploy. And what we're going to do is we're going to run node space. This script is only going to run and finish automatically. We don't want it to keep going. Nodemon is useful if you have a script that you want to keep running, like it's going to continue running after you start it indefinitely until you stop it. This script we're only going to run once, it's going to terminate, and then we're going to run it again later. So we can just use node. We don't need to use nodemon. And we're going to run a file that we haven't created called deploy commands.js. Node source/deploy commands.js. And we could run that right now. It wouldn't do anything because that file doesn't exist though. So we're not really even going to bother at this point. And that is it for our package.json. Go ahead and save it. Okay, so we're going to go into our source folder, which should have the index.js and also our madlibs templates. And what I've provided for you here is basically just like a string. It's an object that creates a template for your madlib. So madlib, you're filling in words that are different kinds, and the user's going to supply those. So what I've done is I've split a JavaScript object, which is just some set of properties to values. We create a property called text, which has a bunch of placeholders in it, numbered in order. And you notice some of them repeat. So whatever we put in place 4 needs to go here and also here. We want to reuse the same word. So this is just some format that I came up with. You can use whatever format you want. And then we also created a property, which is an array. And our array here has a bunch of strings in it, which tell us what we want the user to supply. And you'll see how we use these in a little bit. But I didn't want everyone to have to write this out because it takes too much time. So we're just going to leave it as it is for now. And you'll notice at the bottom, we have a thing that says export default. So we want this to be accessible from other modules. We want to use it in index.js. So we're going to export our thing. We could do this 2 ways. We could export the name of the variable, madlib. I guess I don't have the right syntax here. Basically, since we only have one thing that's being exported, we are going to export it as the default, which means if we import, it's just going to automatically take this. If we have lots of things we're exporting, then we import only the things we want. There is no default thing to import. But here, there's only one object, so we're just going to export it as the default thing. Okay, we're going to go index.js. So right now, this has nothing to do with Discord. It's just a console.log message we wrote earlier, which is the way you print a console. And we're going to do a couple things. So what we're going to do first is we're going to import a couple things from discord.js. If you're using VS Code, any packages that you've installed should autocomplete here. So we know that we have discord.js. And the 2 things that we're going to import are if we only wanted to import one thing, we could just write the thing that we're importing. But because it's 2 things, we need to put it in brackets, which means we can have lots of different properties. And we're going to import client and also intents. So the client is the actual Discord client that's going to run our bot. And then intents is, I don't even know how to describe what an intent is. You'll see as we use it what it is, but it's basically just like a description of what we want our thing to do. And there's lots of different kinds of intents, and you can add them to the client. So this is the format for importing things as a module. We specify what module we want to import from. We install discord.js. And then we import the 2 things that we've exported that we care about. There are lots of exports from this. They didn't export default. They exported a lot of things separately. We only want the client and intents, so we're only going to import those. We're also going to prove that we can import from modules that we wrote really quick. And we're going to import madlib. Again, it's only one thing, so we don't have to put it in brackets. From ./madlib templates. So what this is doing is it's saying, don't look for a package. This / means it's something that's actually here, like in our project. And the file is madlib templates. And it assumes that it's JS because you can only import JS to JS. So you don't have to put the actual tag at the end. And that's going to import the thing that we exported. We can actually console.log this really quick and actually make sure that this is the thing that we exported. So console.log, and we can run our npm start command at the bottom again, just to see if it prints the right thing. Come on, you can do it. Oh, you cannot do it. What did we do? Oh, I did a boo-boo and I put a space in my folder name, and that is not okay. Okay, give me 1 second to fix this. At least I assume that's what the issue is. I put a space in my folder name and it's kind of having issues with that on the path. If you have the same error, we should try and fix it together. I don't know what else the issue would be, but I'm not super confident that this is actually the fix.
I just renamed, like I renamed it to my just template.js and I did the same thing.
You renamed the file Madlib's template. I'm renaming the whole folder just because it had a space in it, but you can, let me actually run this and see if that was the actual problem. Or if there's another problem here. Imports and exports are surprisingly tricky as well, like they shouldn't be, but there are issues. Okay, so that was not the issue.
Go back to the NSJS or something. This is not that JS at the end.
Actually require .js? Oh, it probably does. Why would it autofill to not have .js? That's so stupid. Okay, if you ever want to stop your script, you can just hit Control-C on any platform that works. I had the same issue. For some reason, VS Code autofills it, but not with the .js on the end. It's not like I have another Madlib template. Okay, that was definitely it. And you'll see that it prints out this very large JavaScript object that we exported. So an object is defined by curly braces and a bunch of properties and values. And these were our 2 properties and values. So sweet deal. You should be seeing this. If you're not, speak up. Okay, so that's still running. I'm going to minimize that for now. Yeah, RS, that also restarts it. So that will also work. You don't have to necessarily stop the whole thing or not. Okay, so we're going to get rid of this console.log. We don't actually want this here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to instantiate our new Discord client, which will actually let us connect to Discord. So we're going to write const client. So in JavaScript, there's no static types. That's what TypeScript is for. If you are writing JavaScript and yelling at yourself, try TypeScript. Instead, we just specify a modifier for our variable. Const means it won't change. Let or var means that it will. This is not going to change. We're only going to create the one client. We're going to create a new client, which is what we've imported. And inside, it takes one argument, which is some options for how we want to instantiate it. And the way we're going to instantiate it is by specifying what is our client supposed to do with the intents that we imported. And we can make it do a lot of things, which is why it's an array. An array is defined by square brackets. And what we're going to specify is intents import dot flags, which it should help you out and make sure, which will let you know that it's doing the right thing. And then dot guild underscore messages. That's the only thing that we care about right now. Actually, it's not true. We're also going to put intents dot flags guilds, which allows us to do literally anything in a server. And guilds messages just means that we want to actually, use the messages somewhere. You might be asking, how did I know how to do any of that? And the answer is documentation. There's some really, really good documentation for discord.js. If you go into your browser and just search up discord.js. Discord.js.org. There's some really good guides on how to use it, but also the documentation is really, really nice. It provides all the classes and everything you can do with all the classes. If we go into our client here, we can search for the client class. And it tells us what is the client. Well, it's the main way for interacting with the Discord API and the starting point for any bot, which is why we're doing it first. And you'll notice that when we create a new Discord client, we need to specify options, which is what we did. We specified an object, a client options object. And if we go into client options to see what is that thing, well, it's a JavaScript object and it can have all of these different properties. We don't care about most of these. The only things we actually care about are the intents property, which again, if you're trying to figure out what do I put into the intents property, you can go here to intents resolvable. And it's an array. It can be a lot of different things. So we can specify all the different flags, the different things that we want. And then it'll basically boil it all down for us and do things behind the scenes. So we specified an array, all of the things that we want our thing to do, and then behind the scenes, it'll make it work. Okay, so let us go to, next, we're gonna write, hold on, this should not, bless you. So this should be lowercase, just so that it's not the same as this. And we're going to next, log in with our client here, which will actually allow the client to access Discord API. Otherwise, it's just going to run and not be able to get to anything. And we're going to use this token. So we're going to use that token that we copied way back earlier into our .env file. This really long string of disgusting characters. And that is the thing that's going to let Discord know this is the right thing. You know, no one else should be using the Discord API except this. And you may be asking, what is this? What is process.env.token? Well, process.env means our current process that is running this bot, whatever process that is, we want to get all of the environment variables for it. And then we need to get the token variable, which is what we specified here. And our process by default doesn't actually know what that is. And that's what .env is for. So we're going to import .env from the package .env. Again, this only has one export, so we don't need to like, put the brackets. And the one piece of code we're going to run at the very top before anything else is .env.config. You could, I think there's properties you can specify in here, but most of the time it'll just leave it vanilla. And it basically just like boils down your .env file and inserts all of those variables into the process. And so now when we call process.env.token, in runtime, the process will look at its environment variables and try and figure out what is the token variable. So the period just means we're going to call a function of this object, and we're importing an object for the package. Yes, this is correct. So the package that we're importing from is .env. And we're just naming the import something. I think we could honestly call this anything we want. We could call this like happy face. And theoretically, this would work. Let's actually try that really quick. I'm curious now. So if I run npm start, which might take a little while. So it's going to run our thing here. And we're not actually printing anything, so we don't know if this is working yet, but it hasn't thrown an error, which theoretically means that it is. So we can name this whatever we want. We're going to name it .env just so that we know what it is. And this is an object we're importing. And the object has a function called config attached to it that inserts all of the things in our .env file, our period env file, into the actual process as it's running. Which
syntax error identify client has already been declared.
Yeah. Oh, you imported it twice. Just take one out. Okay. So it should reload automatically and it should not give you another error, hopefully. Okay, awesome. So right now our bot is actually authenticated to Discord. If you open Discord and look at your server, you'll notice that the bot is now online. If your bot is running, it will appear online. If it is not running, it will not, which means if it's online, you did something right. So check to make sure it's online. Can you open your .env file for me? Okay, so theoretically, everyone has this working now, which would be great. And we're going to put in an event here. So our client can respond to a lot of events. That's how you make a bot actually work. So we're going to do client.on, which responds to some event. And this is a function that has two parameters. The first parameter is what is the event we want, and that's a string. So we're going to respond to the ready event, which means that our client has successfully loaded up. And then we're going to specify a function in here that does something when that actually finishes. And what we're going to do is we're just going to console.log loaded successfully. So if we restart that, you'll get a little thing down here loaded successfully, which just lets you know that the thing actually did load correctly. Just some verification. And we could specify this function like as an actual function declaration in Java or in JavaScript. We don't like create methods for objects. Instead, we can literally just define a function anywhere. It can be attached to nothing with the function keyword and then a name for our function. We can call it blah, and then parameters, and then the things inside. And we can call it as blah here. There's lots of other ways we can do this though.
So we made a function inside the client.on. But I mean, why? Like, didn't we just put console.log inside there to read that out? Like,
So the second parameter here requires an actual function. Like in JavaScript, functions are basically the same as any variable. You can assign it to a variable and then put the variable somewhere. A function can be referenced. Like you can't do that in Java or in C, but you can do that in JavaScript. So we could specify the function up here and then give a reference to that same function here. Yeah. And we can do that. We can specify functions a couple different ways. So this is the old way of doing functions. We give it a name. You can also do something called arrow syntax, which is a little bit weirder. It's basically a way of defining a function that has no name. If you've heard of anonymous functions before, it's the same thing as an anonymous function. It's a function without a name because we don't care about what it's named. We're not going to use it more than once. And the way that we do that is by specifying simply the parameters and then an arrow, an equal sign, and a right caret, and then the code inside. And this is just an anonymous function. There's no name. We can still get a reference to it. We can assign it to a variable. And then we can call the function through that variable. That calls the fn function, no problem. And if we put some code in here, if we put console.log test, reload this, it will actually write test here. And we can use this to our advantage to basically write a function in much smaller syntax. You'll be doing this a lot, writing functions that are arguments to another function. JavaScript works based on handling events, which means when an event occurs, run this function. And we can do that by just specifying an anonymous function because we're not going to run this somewhere else. It only pertains to this event. And so we can specify our anonymous function directly in line here. So if we save this, all we're doing here is we're specifying this function does not have a name. It doesn't have any parameters. This is a code we want to run. And the reference to that function is passed into the second parameter for client.on. So we're going to use that syntax from here on out. If it ever is confusing and you're confused, what's going on, I can explain it again. But this is just what people do because it's a little bit simpler. So we'll keep our console.log in here, which was and our bot doesn't actually do anything yet. So the next thing is we got to actually give it something to do. So again, our bot is going to feed up a Mad Lib whenever we want. actually, we're going to leave this for now. We're going to do something else first. So you'll remember that we put in a command over here called node source deploy commands, and we didn't do anything with it. We're going to do something with it now. We need to create this file, source deploy commands. Deploy commands.js, make sure it has the same name and the same location as your thing over here. And I'm going to turn this off because it's going to drive me crazy. We're not using it right now, so we can turn off the Nodemon. And this is, we're basically going to create a script here that creates all of the commands that our bot handles and then submits them to Discord so that Discord can register them with our bot. And that way people can actually use them. And we need two packages for this to work. We're going to install them with npm I in the terminal. And we're going to save these as dev dependencies again, because we're running this simply so that our bot re-registers the commands. This isn't going to affect the actual runtime of the bot. So it's in dev dependencies. And the two things we're going to install, Control C. That works on every single platform, Windows and Mac and Linux. So npm I --save-dev. And the two packages we're going to install are at discord.js with no period this time, /rest, and then at discord.js, sorry, not without the dot, at discord.js /builders. It's your full command. And theoretically, we'll install both things. If it gives you any errors, let me know. And I'll give you a little summary of all the things it did. It changed more than just those two packages. So I don't know what else it was doing, but it did something. Or maybe these are like split into several pieces. I don't know. Something happened. But it didn't give us any errors, which means those two things are installed. And if we go to package.json, we can see these are dev dependencies. So it did work. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our commands. So we'll go into deploy commands here, and we will import our .env from the package.env again, because we want to use our environment variables. We'll write .env.config, which is always the first thing you do to actually load up those variables into the process when it's running. And after that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called commands and assign it to an array. We're going to populate the array with the commands that we want it to be able to recognize. Okay, so the way we specify a command is with the builder that we installed. So we need to import that really quick. We will import / at discord.js /builders. So you'll notice that because it's, even though it's only one thing, we put it in the brackets here. The difference between these two is that .env only has one default export, which means it knows what it's coming out and you can just name it whatever you want. But because this has lots of different exports, we always have to wrap it in the curly braces and specify which one we want, I think. I could actually just be wrong outright. Maybe this works. Give me 1 second to test this. Imports are really messy. I should know more about this than I do. Okay, because it's not a default export, we have to have the brackets in the top there and specify which specific thing, even if it's only one. Okay, so this is an object, and we can create our commands by using a new /command builder object. And we're going to create a bunch of them. So we're going to put them directly into the array. And this is this object is kind of cool. It works in the factory design pattern, which you might have touched if you used Java before. There's a couple of interesting things that are factory builds. But basically what you do is you create the thing, and then you specify through functions what properties of that thing you want it to have. And then at the end, it will collect it all and build the object. So we're going to build a new /command builder, and we're going to set the name of it, which actually it's one contiguous line, .set name This is the name of our command. We'll call this ping for now. We're just going to run a command really quick that tests for latency, just to make sure that this works. And we're going to set a description using the set description function. Tests latency. And so that's all we need for this one. And we're going to specify some more commands in here later, but we just want to make sure this works first. So we're going to call .map at the bottom. Basically, like our /command builder is great, but the actual Discord API doesn't know what that is because it's a JavaScript object. We need to turn it into JSON, which is the format that is you exchange data through the web. The way we're going to do that is we're going to call the .map function, which basically takes everything in the array and does something to it. And we're going to specify an anonymous function in here, which is what do we want to actually do to it. And the way that this works is it's going to run for every single object, which we're going to arbitrarily name command, because it's one specific command at a time. It's going to pass each one into a separate call of this anonymous function. And then we can do something to it. We're going to map up some sort of like, process to that specific object. What we're going to do is to JSON. And so what this does is it basically takes our array here of /command builder objects, and it's going to turn them all into JSON objects. And then it's going to return the array as an array of JSON objects, which we can use to actually do interesting things. Okay, so now we need to actually submit it to Discord and let them know that we're good to go. So we're going to import another thing at the top here. We're going to import routes from Discord API types /v10, which I just remembered we did not actually import, so we'll need to do that. We're also going to import REST in all caps from @discord.js/rest. Save it and it will auto format for me. It might not for you guys. These are the two things we're importing here. And we didn't actually import Discord API types, so we'll have to npm I it. It's a dev dependency, Discord API types. Give me a second to catch up. Okay, so I installed all the packages for me. This is a command you need. Just give me a thumbs up when you're good. Good, good, good. Okay, so we have all those imported and we have successfully installed Discord API types. So now what we can do is we can write some extra code at the bottom here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create something called REST. We're going to instantiate the thing we just imported. And REST is an acronym that stands for something that I don't know what it is. I should, but it's basically the standard way of interacting with services on the web. There's different protocols for how you're exchanging data. You can either put data to a server, or you can get data from a server, or you can delete data from a server. Those are the different protocols. There's more. But REST is just like a general paradigm for how you should design services. So we're going to create a new object which can actually run our REST requests. The client requests to the server gives things back. And we're going to set the token to be our process.env.token again. Because again, we're submitting it to Discord, so we need to prove that we're the real deal. And then we're going to run a piece of code in a try block. So try catch just lets us run some code, and if there's an error, we can catch the error and run some other code and not actually just break everything. And if we get that error in the bottom here, we're just going to console.log it. So if we ever see an error, it'll tell us what it is and we can fix it. And we need to put the code that could potentially cause the error up here. What we're going to do is we are going to run rest.put. That is the specific protocol that we're going to run. We're going to put in a wait keyword at the beginning, which I will explain in a little bit. And in here, we need to specify what are the things we're putting. So the first thing is the actual commands. I lied. So the first thing is we're gonna do routes dot application guild commands, which is a mouthful. And then do two parameters in here. The first is the process.env.client ID. And the second is the process.env.guild ID, which we filled into our .env file earlier. Client ID is the ID of the bot user itself. And then the guild ID is the ID of the server. So this is going to register the commands only on the specific server that we've chosen. There are other ways to register. Like if you have your bot on multiple servers, you can register global commands, which automatically apply to everything, but it's more of a hassle, so we're going to skip that. And then there's another parameter for this rest.put. So outside of your application guilds commands, a comma, and then we're going to specify in a JavaScript object using brackets to specify our object, we're going to put a body property. And we're going to give it our commands array. And it's going to auto format for me here just to make it a little more legible. There's two parameters. So the first thing is specifying the properties for our protocol. And then the second is what do we want to actually submit? Well, the body of our thing should be the commands that we want to register. And if for some reason this doesn't work, like if we're not authorized, it'll give us an error and then we'll log that error. So this is pretty much done at this point. We can actually see that this worked by running back to our terminal and running npm run deploy commands. Might be asking, well, why did we run npm start? But this one has to be npm run deploy. And that was actually the name of our thing, just deploy. The reason is because start is a command that has been designated as node by like npm as important. So there's a couple of commands that it knows, and you can just write npm that thing. But because we're specifying a custom command, we need to specify that we're running this custom command. So npm run deploy should do the thing. If it gives you an error, speak up. Okay, well, this is not good. What did we do? Invalid body form. Dictionaries may be used in the dict type. Okay, so I think it doesn't like something about this. So let's console.log this really quick just to see what's going on. So again, this script only runs once. It's not continuous because we didn't specify nodemon. So we'll have to run it again. And we print undefined. Why is this undefined? So it didn't like something about this new / command builder.
I logged the command. And another thing.
Yeah, I have the same thing here. So something about this command.json isn't working. So let's try something else here. I'm going to console.log our object that we create, the new / command builder object. And I'm also going to console.log our command.toJSON. Or rather, we'll do this whole thing again. And then we'll just make it a JSON object at the end. And we'll log those two and see what those are. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. So the first thing we logged was the actual / command builder object, which this looks good. That's what this is. And then we're logging that thing .toJSON, which also looks good. And then we're logging the actual commands object, and that's not. Why would that not be good?
Commands.
That was my initial thought. I don't know why that would be a problem. So this, we can actually call this literally anything. We're just naming each individual thing that's being mapped. We can call it A. This is the actual variable that holds the array. Console.log command. Why isn't this working? This should not be hard. Wait, but now it works. Okay, so I don't know why this matters, but I just changed this code up here. So previously we had specified in actual functional brackets here that this is the operation we want to run. This is a function. And for some reason, it doesn't like this. It's going to error out here. This is something that I should understand as well, but I don't. So if you take this out and then take out the semicolon here, basically, instead of providing a whole function, we just specify one specific thing we want to call. We don't have to use the bracket syntax. We can just call the thing directly here, and it will call this for every single A variable. And this works. I don't know why this works, but the other doesn't. They seem like they should both work to me. But if we run deploy commands here, then it'll just print the two things out and there'll be no errors. So I don't know. Wild. Did everyone successfully remove that error? Got it. If this worked, you won't get an error, and you can also see that it worked, which we'll do shortly. Just let me know if you're good. Good. Yeah. So what I did, which he's exactly right, is we specified a function here by putting in curly braces like any function is. But because we didn't return anything, a JavaScript object also is defined with braces. So we, in order to let this know that it's an actual function, we could return a.json here. And that will actually work the exact same way as if we didn't use our braces here. Thank you for that. That's very, very helpful. And that also makes sense because our error was something about a dictionary not being valid. And the dictionary is just our alternative structure here. So if no errors popped up, it worked. So whichever way you go, leave it. If it all works, don't complain, because if you complain, things will just get worse. Okay, so we can see that worked. So let's go back to our npm start command, which will run our bot again, which theoretically is not running right now because I've turned it off. You might not have turned yours off. So again, once it gives you your console.log that says that it actually turned on, we can go back into Discord onto our test server, and you'll see that it's online here. And the reason it's called slash commands is because everything starts with a slash. So if you type a /, it'll bring up this really long list of all the slash commands that are available on your server. These are all built into Discord, but you'll notice the Mad Libs bot now provides a slash command that we just put in called ping. And you can type /ping and then click enter and click enter again, and it'll try and run it. But it's going to send a bunch of dots and then say the application didn't respond because we didn't define anything that's actually going to happen when that slash command runs. That's our next step. But it registered, which is what we want. That's what that script is for. Anytime you change the commands, run that script again, it'll update on your server. Okay, so super cool. We got that. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our index.js and we're going to define an action for that specific command. And so this is another event. This event is called interaction create, an interaction with our robot. And so we need to listen for that. Client.on interaction create. And then we can specify our anonymous function, just like we did previously. And this time there is a parameter here. This parameter is the actual interaction object that we are using in our interaction. And we don't just as human beings know what's in here, we can actually check the documentation and see all of the properties. We go to interaction here, interaction objects. You'll see there's all kinds of things we can get from it. We can get the guild it was sent in, the actual server. We can get the user who sent it. We can get the ID of that specific interaction. We can get lots of really cool things from here. We could get the channel it's sent in. If you want to use any of those properties, you can. We're not actually going to use any of those right now. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to quickly check first to make sure that it's actually a command that's being run. So if interaction.isCommand is false, then we just want to return. So interaction is not just limited to our slash commands. Interaction is defined by a bunch of other events too. Like if you, I don't know what else is an interaction per se, but you can check the documentation for this. But the only thing we care about is if it runs a command. We want to listen for the commands. So anything else, we're just going to return and not run our code just to save some time. And we can get properties from it. So we can write command name is equal to interaction dot command name. We can also get the options from interaction dot options. We're not going to use the options right now because we haven't specified any options for our command. If we go back in here, surely one of these has options. So if we try to run the unflip command, you'll see that there's an option defined called message. So we can type in a message here of blah, and then we table flip and it writes the message and then it table flips at the end. We didn't specify any options for this particular command, so we don't actually care about this, but we will later. I don't know if we'll actually like go to the Mad Lib section of this, just because I've already taken up so much of your time today. But we can talk about it. We can at least finish this command, which is the core process. And if you guys are good to stay until 7, we can finish it out. From here, it should be much faster because we're just going to write. We're not going to introduce any new concepts. The new stuff takes longer to explain, but from here, it's pretty much we're just going to do more of the stuff that we previously did. So we should definitely be able to finish by 7. Are you all 3 good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to leave options there for now. And we're going to check what our command name is. So if our command name is equal to ping, which is what we set the name to be in our deploy commands here, set name ping, then we're going to run some code. And the code that we want to run is interaction.reply, which sends some sort of response back to the user to let them know that it was successfully processed. And we're going to send back a string of just text that we want them to see. We're going to do this with something called a template string. This doesn't exist in Java as far as I know, but a template string basically lets you write a bunch of characters and then embed variables directly into it. So you don't have to like constantly end the string and then plus the variable plus restart the string. It helps a little bit. It's an interesting feature more than anything. Python does the same thing too. So the string part is normal. We're just going to write pong, and then we're going to specify how long it took for us to get the actual thing, which is the latency, how long it took for the reply to happen. And we're going to write $ and then open and close brackets, which means inside here, we want to write some actual JavaScript. And we're going to get the interaction object, and we're going to get the client property, and we're going to get the WS property, which I think stands for web server or web socket. And then we're going to get the ping, which is how long it took for this to actually be processed. And at the end, we'll put MS outside just in the actual string portion again. We could write literally any JavaScript we want in here. We could put a variable name if it exists elsewhere. We could write like an actual function to be called that returns something, anything.
So like see that as like text. I'm wondering, like, do you have some kind of IntelliSense plugin installed for JavaScript?
It shouldn't.
Because
So you got to. So the important thing to note here is that these are not actual single quotes. So in JavaScript, single like a asterisk, not an asterisk, an apostrophe. I speak English. An apostrophe or double quotes specifies an actual string. The template string is actually this weird like tilde mark, which is in the top left of your keyboard. That specifies a template string, and then it should recognize it as JavaScript and make it a different color, theoretically. to the left of the 1 key. Does it look right? Okay, awesome. And so now we're going to leave this. That's all we need. After we send a reply, we're done. And we can actually test this on our server now. The command is already registered, so we don't have to re-register it. If we change the fundamental properties of the command in that script, like the builder, then we need to re-register it. But if we're changing the interaction happens exclusively on the bot. So we don't have to reload, we don't have to redeploy the commands. Yeah. Oop, that's not it. Triple equals in JavaScript means make sure that this is the exact right thing that we're looking for. Usually you want to use triple equals. Double equals is a little more loosey-goosey. If they hold the same like relative value, then it'll still say that it's true, which sometimes can cause issues. Like 0 technically is equal to undefined with 2 equals, which usually you don't care about, but it can cause some issues. So use triple equals unless you know that you want to use double for a specific reason. Okay, so our thing is still running, Nodimon is still on, and now we can run our command /ping. And instead of saying nothing, it's going to actually give us our reply, our text that we put in there. And it's going to give us the number 30 because that's what we got from that JavaScript call that we embedded. If we used normal quotations, it would just give us the exact string, and it would give us $, open close bracket, interaction, blah, 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 blah. But because we use a template string, it just automatically subs in the value, which is pretty cool. Okay, that's solid. What is the next thing we need to do? There was something I skipped here. What did I skip? No, I didn't skip anything. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create another command. Our command here is going to actually run our like Mad Libs. So we want a different command. So go back into our deploy commands here. And we're going to, in our array here, where our new /command builder is here, we're going to specify a comma at the very end of our builder, and we're going to create a new one, a new /command builder. And we can set the name of this, and this is going to be madlib. The name is just the actual command that they're going to use, / the name. And we'll set our description to be serves a madlib to the user. Nothing fancy. And we actually want to specify an option here just for fun, just to prove that we can do it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a string option. You can add all kinds of options. You can add a Boolean option, a number option, any of those. And the way that we're going to add our string option is we're going to, I don't really know how to describe what this is doing. So I'm not, like, honestly, I don't even know how to describe this. So we're going to write it and then try and figure out what's going on here. So we're going to specify another anonymous function inside here. And the parameter for this anonymous function is going to be, we can name it whatever we want. We're going to name it an option because it's the object for the option that we're eventually going to return. And I'm going to open brackets here just to prove it's an anonymous function, but you could also do this the same format we did earlier where you don't use the brackets and then you just write out the thing that's happening and don't put a semicolon at the end. But we'll put the brackets in just for clarity that it's a function. And we're going to return, since we didn't do that earlier, the option objects. And we're going to set a couple things on the option. We're going to set the name of the option to be the title for the madlib. We're going to set the description to be make up a random title for the madlib. And we're going to set required to be true. And then we'll put a semicolon. So required means that they cannot submit the command unless they put a value in. If it's optional, you can leave that out, but we need them to put it in a title. And we'll have to redeploy this because we fundamentally changed the commands. So I'm going to actually just create a new terminal down here with the new terminal button. that way our Nodimon can still run in the other terminal. We can just swap back and forth. But this one will be for deploying commands. So we'll run npm run deploy. Theoretically, there will be no errors here. Hopefully. Okay, no errors. It just ran through. And I guess we should actually put a console.log here after our rets.put, just so that we know that it actually finished. In the future. Generally, it's a good idea to log things just so you know where things are, especially if it's just going to the console. No like actual user is going to see the console, so log whatever the hell you want. And if we go back in here, we can check our madlib command. And now you'll see a little black box that says title, which is the option that we put in, and it's required. So now we can't just submit madlib, we have to also put in title. So if we click enter after typing in /madlib, it will give us the option for the title, and we can put anything we want in here, blah, 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 space, blah, blah, blah. And then we click tab, it's telling us to tell tab, and then it'll submit that as the option. And now we can click enter and submit the command. And we didn't specify any interaction to reply to for this command. So it's going to, again, give us that red error message of doom. So that's the next thing we need to do. We need to actually tell it to do something. Okay, awesome. So here's where we get to the actual fun stuff. So we're going to, if you did, you should have already imported madlib from the top here from madlib-templates.js. And if you remember correctly, this is an object which with two properties, the text with a bunch of placeholders, and then the things we want to send out. So the way we're going to structure this is we're going to get the requirements and send that to the user, tell them this is what I need you to give me. And then when they reply with those requirements, each on their own line, we're going to automatically sub them in order to the placeholder that corresponds to that line number. So placeholder 0 is going to get whatever they put at the 0th index, 1, blah, 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 blah. And that way we can reuse things like here, number 4 corresponds to this noun. We can use it multiple times in different locations by just putting it everywhere in the string we see a 4 placeholder. It's pretty cool. Generally, I would recommend that if you extend this in the future, you should make more than one madlib, like make it an array and then pick one randomly. But just for simplicity, we're only going to import the one object. Okay, so we're done with deploy commands and we're done with madlib templates. So what we're going to do is we are first going to save a little bit more information about the interaction related to this specific command. So we'll do an else statement here and check if command name is equal to madlib. If we just did an else here, it would catch literally every single command and try and run our code on it, which we don't want. We only want madlib. So that is important. And we're going to get the title from the option. So up here, we pulled the options from the interaction. So we can actually just use options.get string. So we want to get one of the string options that was provided, and we want to get the title option, which is the name of the thing. What is this not like? Why is it telling me I need a semicolon here? Oh, this is an else. I didn't follow my own advice, so that was really cool of me. Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to get the properties from that madlib object that we imported. So we'll get the text property from madlib.text. And then we'll get the requirements property from madlib.requirements. And those are both going to be the exact same format. So this one's going to be a string and this one's going to be our array of requirements. And we're going to create a return message here. So let return message equal to some string. And notice that we put let here because we're going to build onto this string to actually build up the thing that it's returning. So if we make it a const, it'll throw an error. And for let rec of requirements, which is an array, do something with that. So if you used a for each in Java, this is the same thing, but for JavaScript. With iterable things, we use the keyword of. So we're defining a variable for each element of this iterable thing. If we wanted to iterate through all the properties of an object, we would use in, which I never remember, and I do this wrong every single time. So we need of here. And then for each one, we're going to do return message plus is equal to append it, and then a new line character plus the specific requirement that needs to go there. And we're going to actually put a little bit of extra text here in the return message just to tell them what to do with it. So let's make a mad lib. You can make this whatever you want. This is not important. Reply to this message in the following formats. This is my, template string. You can put whatever you want in there. This is not important. Just lets them know what order they need to put things back. And then once we're done with that, we will send it back with a reply to the interaction. Return message. Okay, and one other thing we're going to do really quick, just because I know we're going to need it later, is we're going to define a, actually, we'll hold off on that for now. So let's test this, just make sure it works. Our Nodimon is still running in the other terminal here, no errors. So now if we go back into Discord, we run our command /madlib, put a title in here, example title. It's going to give us back our thing, and it's going to substitute in all those requirements on their own line, which is what we added. And then that extra thing at the top telling them what to do. This is what you should be seeing. It should be exactly this because we haven't defined random mad libs yet. There's only one. So it should have all these same requirements. This is all the code for this particular command. Thumbs up when you're good. /madlib, and then you'll have to click enter, and it'll take you to the title option. And then you put in something there, just type in a random title, and then click enter again. All right. So basically what we're going to do from here is we're just going to actually take the specific event that is being responded to. And we're going to do that through another thing, client.on message create. And we're going to specify some code in here for the message and respond to that. The entire code for this is on the link tree. You can actually fill this out because this is basically the last thing. The only other changes to this are in index.js. So you can copy that from the repository and look through it and see what else is on there. But everything should make sense now. We covered all the things that are actually important for making this work. Do you guys have any questions about anything that was going on? Or are we pretty much good at this point? You can finish this out on your own time. I would love to be able to finish this, but we got to check out.